The moment we step into 11 December, something begins to move inside you, a shift that feels like Mercury rising within your own mind. This isn't about planets or stars. It's about the inner movement you can sense when life pushes you to think differently, act differently, and finally see what you've been avoiding. The Mercury shift is the change of mental speed, clarity, and honesty. It's the moment when you stop running from yourself and you start understanding that your own mind has been asking for an upgrade for a long time. On 11 December, that upgrade becomes impossible to ignore. This shift arrives quietly, but it is firm. It doesn't shake the outside world. It shakes the inside world. It makes you confront the places where you've been too slow, too comfortable, too passive, or too attached to old patterns. The Mercury shift increases the pace of your thinking. It sharpens your awareness. You begin to see your habits from a distance, almost as if you're watching someone else live your life. And when you see them from that angle, you understand what must change. 11 December acts like a turning point, a symbolic doorway where your inner world asks you to step through with honesty. When this shift happens, you can't pretend anymore. The things you tolerated start to irritate you. The excuses you used stop working. The fears that held you back begin to lose their power because your clarity is waking up. And with clarity comes responsibility. When the Mercury shift flows through your thoughts, it demands that you stop blaming circumstances or people and start taking ownership of your choices. This shift doesn't arrive to destroy you, it arrives to upgrade you. When your mind moves faster, sharper, cleaner, you realize how heavy your old identity has been. On 11 December, you become aware of how many parts of you have been built on automatic behavior. You begin to question why you talk the way you talk, why you react the way you react, why you repeat the same patterns even when they don't serve you. The shift inside you exposes the unnecessary weight you've been carrying for years. As the Mercury shift intensifies, you feel pushed toward precision. No more vague intentions. No more half-hearted decisions. No more walking through life half awake. This energy forces your inner world to become direct, straight, and true. It encourages you to simplify your thoughts, to concentrate your willpower, and to act from a place of awareness instead of impulse. You begin to realize that you can no longer afford to be careless with your time, your actions, or your growth. 11 December marks the moment where you finally understand that your mind is ready to evolve. You might feel more alert, more reflective, or even more restless. That restlessness is not a problem. It is a sign that your old identity is cracking. The Mercury shift exposes all the places where you've been limiting yourself. It shows you how small your thinking has been compared to what you're truly capable of. It challenges you to rise to a higher level of discipline, focus, and self-respect. This shift also brings a new kind of honesty. You begin to admit the truth to yourself, what you want, what you fear, what you've been avoiding, what you must let go of. The Mercury shift pushes you toward mental courage. It makes you confront your weaknesses, not to shame you, but to free you, because you cannot grow while pretending. You cannot transform while hiding. And on 11 December, your mind refuses to hide any longer. You feel a push to clean your inner space. Thoughts that drain you become visible. People who distract you become visible. Habits that shrink you become visible. And once you see them, you cannot unsee them. This is the power of the shift. It brings light into the corners of your life where you've stored the things you didn't want to deal with. Now, you must face them, but facing them is not a punishment, it is liberation. As the Mercury shift continues through 11 December, you begin to feel your inner voice getting stronger. Not the loud, anxious voice, not the fearful voice, the steady voice, the clear voice, the one that has been waiting beneath all the noise. That voice guides you to become the version of yourself you were supposed to grow into. It teaches you to act with intention, to speak with purpose, and to move with awareness. This shift demands that you disconnect from distractions and reconnect with your core. It tells you that your growth can no longer be delayed. It reminds you that every moment wasted on old patterns is a moment stolen from your future self. So you start choosing differently. You start thinking differently. You start living differently, not because someone told you to, but because the shift inside you makes anything less feel unacceptable. On 11 December, the Mercury shift becomes your inner teacher. It asks you to rise. It asks you to let go. It asks you to step into clarity, discipline, and personal truth. And once this shift begins, there is no going backward. You can only go forward toward a version of yourself that is sharper, wiser, cleaner, and more aligned with your true potential. When the Mercury shift moves through you on 11 December, the first thing it touches is your identity. Not the identity you show the world, but the quiet one beneath your actions, your reactions, your beliefs, and your habits. This shift begins to loosen everything you built out of fear, pressure, imitation, or survival. It doesn't ask for permission. It simply starts pulling away the layers that no longer match the direction your inner self wants to grow toward. And as this happens, you feel something unusual, a sense that the person you used to be is no longer enough for the person you are becoming. On 11 December, the Mercury shift works like a sharp mirror. It shows you the parts of your identity that were formed by old experiences, old conversations, old wounds, and old expectations. It exposes how much of your life has been shaped by patterns you accepted without question. Suddenly, you realize that many of your behaviors don't belong to you anymore. They were useful once, but now they stand in the way of your evolution. And once this becomes clear, you cannot stay the same. This shift carries a quiet firmness. It dissolves the identity that was built on hesitation and indecision. It breaks down the identity that depended on pleasing people. It weakens the identity that stayed silent just to avoid conflict. And it completely dismantles the identity that was scared to dream bigger. The Mercury shift does not come to destroy you. It comes to free you from the version of yourself that you outgrew long ago but never had the courage to release. On this day, your inner world becomes louder than your outer world. You begin to notice how much energy you waste maintaining an identity that no longer feels honest. You see the moments when you pretend to be fine, even when you're not. You notice the times when you hold back your truth because you fear judgment. The Mercury shift makes these moments impossible to ignore. It shows you that your old identity was built for survival, not for growth. As the shift intensifies on 11 December, you begin to feel a strange kind of detachment from your old self. You don't react the same way. You don't think the same way. The impulses that once controlled you lose their grip. The emotions that used to overwhelm you become easier to observe. This detachment is not emptiness, it is clarity. It is the space your new self needs in order to unfold. Your old identity may try to resist. It may try to pull you back into the familiar patterns, because familiarity feels safe. But the Mercury shift keeps pushing you forward. It reminds you that comfort is not growth. It reminds you that repeating the past is not progress. It pushes you to choose awareness over fear, intention over habit, and truth over convenience. This is the moment when the old identity begins to crumble. On 11 December, your inner dialogue changes. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? You start asking, what is this teaching me? And with that single shift, your old identity loses its foundation. Because your old self was built on reaction. Your new self is built on understanding. Your old self needed validation. Your new self needs honesty. Your old self avoided challenges. Your new self grows through them. The Mercury shift shows you that identity is not something you inherit. It is something you choose. And choosing requires awareness. It requires responsibility. It requires discipline. When you start taking ownership of your reactions, your habits, and your thinking, you begin to reshape your identity from the inside out. This is the true effect of 11 December, not a change outside you, but the awakening of the part of you that finally says, enough. I am ready to evolve. This shift also teaches you that letting go does not mean losing. It means clearing space for who you were meant to become. It means releasing the attitudes that keep you small. It means abandoning the excuses that keep you weak. It means dropping the emotional baggage that slows every step you take. On 11 December, the Mercury shift gives you the courage to walk away from the limited version of yourself. You may feel emotional. You may feel restless. You may feel like something inside you is breaking. But what is breaking is not your strength. It is your attachment to the identity that kept you trapped. You are not falling apart. You are shedding. You are not losing yourself. You are finding yourself. You are not ending. You are beginning. This is how the Mercury shift transforms your identity by forcing you to stand face to face with what you've been holding on to and what you must release. It gives you the clarity to see through your own illusions. It gives you the strength to step away from the habits that no longer serve your growth. And more importantly, it reminds you that you are not meant to stay the same. On 11 December, the old identity ends, not because something external demands it, but because you finally recognize that staying the same would be a betrayal of your own potential. The Mercury shift opens the doorway to the version of you that is stronger, sharper, and more aligned with the truth you've been avoiding. The transformation begins the moment you stop clinging to who you were and start committing to who you are ready to become. When the Mercury shift reaches its peak on 11 December, something powerful awakens inside you. It is not loud, not dramatic on the outside, but deeply transformative within. This shift activates a part of you that has been quiet for too long, the wiser, clearer, more aware version of yourself. You begin to sense a new guidance rising from within, a voice that speaks with calm certainty instead of fear or confusion. This is the activation of your higher self, the part of you that sees beyond impulse and emotion, the part that recognizes what truly matters and what no longer deserves your energy. On 11 December, the Mercury shift doesn't just change how you think, it changes where your thoughts come from. Instead of reacting from your old identity, you start responding from a deeper intelligence. You begin to notice that your intuition sharpens. Certain thoughts that once felt blurry become sharp and undeniable. You see patterns in your life with more clarity. You understand why certain things had to leave and why certain doors had to close. You begin to recognize that this inner awakening is not happening to disturb you, it is happening to realign you. This shift pushes you to listen to yourself in a different way. The guidance that rises within becomes steady, almost like a quiet instruction that tells you what step to take next. You feel more connected to your own truth. You are no longer satisfied with living on the surface level of your mind. You start craving depth, purpose, and clarity. That is the effect of the Mercury shift. It forces your awareness to rise above the noise of your old habits. On 11 December, you may feel moments where your intuition becomes stronger than your doubt. You may notice you hesitate less. You may feel compelled to make decisions you've postponed for months. This is not randomness. This is the activation of your higher self, taking over where your old identity used to hesitate. You begin to trust yourself more. You begin to sense what aligns with your growth and what pulls you backward. The Mercury shift exposes all the ways you've been ignoring your inner guidance. It shows you every moment you abandoned your own wisdom to please others, to stay in comfort, or to avoid confronting the truth. Now, that is no longer possible. Once your higher self awakens, ignoring it becomes painful. You feel it when something is wrong. You feel it when something is right. You feel it when something is draining you. You feel it when something is calling you forward. And you cannot pretend not to feel it anymore. This awakening is not soft. It is precise. It removes the illusions you've been living under. The Mercury shift strips away the noise that once controlled your thinking. You begin to value silence. You begin to value self-control. You begin to value clarity in a way you never did before. And with that clarity, you start noticing how much of your life was built on automatic reactions. Now, the automatic reactions break. What takes their place is awareness, sharp, grounded awareness. On 11 December, your higher self steps forward and begins to guide you toward discipline. Not the kind of discipline forced by pressure, but the discipline born from understanding. When you see the truth clearly, you naturally want to act correctly. You naturally want to protect your time. You naturally want to honor your potential. This is the inner transformation triggered by the Mercury shift. You no longer live blindly. You live consciously. This shift also awakens a new sense of responsibility. You stop blaming circumstances. You stop waiting for motivation. You stop expecting others to save you from your own patterns. The higher self activated within you reminds you that growth is a personal commitment. It tells you that every choice you make shapes your future. It tells you that your life cannot change until you change your thinking. The Mercury shift on 11 December demands this level of honesty. It demands maturity. It demands self-respect. As you move through this activation, you begin to feel more aligned with your inner truth. You sense a calm determination rising within you. You are no longer driven by fear. You are driven by clarity. You are no longer reacting from emotional impulses. You are responding from inner strength. This is the transformation that marks the beginning of a new chapter. The Mercury shift teaches you that your higher self has always been there. It was simply buried beneath doubt, habit, distraction, and noise. On 11 December, that noise weakened. You begin to hear yourself clearly again. You begin to feel connected to a deeper purpose. You begin to recognize that your life is not meant to be lived through confusion, but through awareness. This awakening also changes your relationship with discomfort. You stop running from it. Instead, you learn from it. You understand that discomfort is not punishment, it is guidance. It shows you where you need to grow, where you need to release, where you need to rise. The Mercury shift makes this visible. It teaches you that your higher self grows strongest in the moments when you choose discipline over habits, growth over excuses, and truth over avoidance. On 11 December, your higher self becomes the leader. Not your fears, not your past, not your old identity. The part of you that is wise, focused, aware, and honest takes the front seat. And once this happens, you cannot return to who you used to be. The shift within you is permanent. It demands that you rise. It demands that you grow. It demands that you step into your power with clarity, intention, and inner strength. This is the true activation of the higher self. The moment when your inner wisdom becomes louder than your old limitation. The Mercury shift on 11 December opens this path, and once opened, it transforms the rest of your journey. When the Mercury shift intensifies on 11 December, your sensitivity to everything around you sharpens in a way you cannot ignore. This sensitivity is not weakness, it is awareness. It is the sudden ability to feel the truth behind situations, to read the energy of people, to sense when something is right for your growth, and when something is quietly draining you. The shift opens your inner senses the same way a window opens to fresh air. And once that window opens, you can't go back to breathing the old, stale air you tolerated for years. On 11 December, the Mercury shift pushes you into a deeper connection with your inner world. You notice your emotions rising more quickly, but they also pass more quickly. You become aware of what triggers you, what heals you, what inspires you, and what hurts you. It's as if your internal radar becomes more precise. This increased sensitivity helps you see the truth behind your own patterns. You begin to understand why you avoid certain conversations, why you stay in certain environments, and why you keep repeating certain habits. The shift exposes these things to guide you toward growth, not to overwhelm you. The Mercury shift heightens your ability to observe, not just react. You feel your emotions with clarity, not confusion. You start noticing the difference between what your mind wants and what your inner self needs. You feel the weight of people's intentions without them speaking a word. You sense when a space is not meant for you anymore. You sense when a choice will cost you your peace. This sensitivity is a signal, a warning system, guidance mechanism. And on 11 December, it becomes sharper than ever. You may find yourself wanting more silence, more distance, more breathing room. This isn't isolation, it is recalibration. When the shift heightens your sensitivity, your mind needs space to process the new clarity. You may feel pulled away from noise, from arguments, from empty conversations, from environments that lower your awareness. This pull is not accidental. It is the Mercury shift clearing your path, removing unnecessary distraction, so you can hear your inner guidance without interference. On 11 December, your intuition becomes stronger than your excuses. You feel when something is wrong before it collapses. You feel when something is right before it begins. You feel the difference between forced connections and aligned ones. This sensitivity leads you toward grounding and intentional living. It teaches you how to pay attention to your body, your emotions, your energy, and your reactions. You begin to recognize how your inner world responds to every choice you make, and you start choosing wisely. This shift also brings vivid inner experiences. Your dreams may become clearer, not because of anything external, but because your mind is reorganizing itself. The Mercury shift heightens your subconscious processing. It brings unresolved thoughts to the surface. It pushes buried emotions into your awareness, so you can release them. It exposes the beliefs you have outgrown. On 11 December, nothing hidden inside you stays hidden. This is not a disturbance. It is purification. You become more aware of your surroundings. You notice details you overlooked before. You feel the energy in a room the moment you walk in. You sense tension, calmness, sincerity, or dishonesty with ease. This sensitivity is your inner compass waking up. It helps you choose the environments that support your growth and avoid the ones that shrink your spirit. The Mercury shift strengthens your ability to see through pretenses, through illusions, through behaviors that once confused you. Now, the truth becomes clear. You may also feel emotional fluctuations. But these shifts are not instability, they are signals. They show you where your healing is needed. They show you which attachments you must release. They show you the old emotional patterns that no longer belong in your new identity. On 11 December, the Mercury shift gives every emotion a purpose. Instead of drowning in feelings, you learn from them. Instead of avoiding them, you understand them. This is the beginning of emotional intelligence, not emotional chaos. As your sensitivity heightens, you begin to value stillness in a way you never did before. You notice how silence reveals answers that noise hides. You feel how slowing down helps you see things you overlooked. You learn that sensitivity is not something to suppress. It is something to master. The Mercury shift teaches you to let awareness guide your steps, not reactions or impulses. This is where your transformation deepens. On 11 December, the Mercury shift pushes you to protect your peace. You become more selective with the people you let near you. You become more careful with your time, your attention, and your energy. You no longer tolerate conversations that drain your growth. You no longer allow situations that disrupt your clarity. This is not selfishness. It is self-respect. When your sensitivity increases, you recognize how easily your energy can be affected and you start guarding it like something valuable, because it is. This heightened awareness also shows you your own strength. You realize how much you can perceive, how deeply you can feel, and how clearly you can understand when you allow your mind to be present. The Mercury shift is training you to be grounded, aware, and intentional. It is teaching you to listen to the signals inside you instead of ignoring them. On 11 December, the Mercury shift does not make you fragile, it makes you powerful. Because true power comes from understanding yourself. It comes from being aware of what shapes you, what affects you, what elevates you, and what weakens you. When you gain this level of sensitivity, you gain the ability to navigate life with precision. This is the gift of the Mercury shift, heightened awareness that leads to self-mastery. Once this sensitivity awakens, every step you take becomes wiser, cleaner, and more aligned with the person you are becoming. On 11 December, when the Mercury shift rises inside you, a very specific kind of challenge appears. It is not random, and it is not meant to break you. It is a test of alignment, a moment where life checks whether you are ready to live according to the clarity you've been given. This test doesn't come from outside forces. It comes from the gap between your old identity and your new awareness. When the Mercury shift sharpens your mind, it also reveals all the places where you have been inconsistent with yourself. Now, the test is simple. Will you choose your old habits, or will you choose the new path your inner self is calling you toward? On 11 December, the Mercury shift creates a pressure that forces you to choose consciously. Every decision feels like it carries weight. Every reaction feels like it exposes a truth. This test doesn't ask you to be perfect, it asks you to be honest. The Mercury shift amplifies your clarity, and with that clarity, you can no longer pretend that you don't know what the right choice is. The test is not about difficulty, it is about responsibility. It asks you to respond to life from awareness, not from impulse. You will notice situations arise that tempt you to slip back into old habits. You may feel pulled toward the same patterns that slowed your growth. Certain people might trigger the versions of you that you've been trying to outgrow. Old emotions may rise, demanding your attention. This is the test. The Mercury shift works like a spotlight. It shines directly on your weak points, not to shame you, but to strengthen you, because you cannot grow if you avoid the parts of yourself that hold you back. On 11 December, you will feel moments where your patience is challenged, where your discipline is tested, where your clarity is questioned. But these moments are not accidents, they are opportunities. The Mercury shift demands alignment between your inner knowing and your outer behavior. If you continue to act from your old identity after gaining new awareness, you create conflict inside yourself. This inner conflict becomes uncomfortable until you choose truth. That discomfort is the test pushing you toward alignment. The test of alignment also appears in your relationships. The Mercury shift makes you more aware of how people affect your energy. On 11 December, certain conversations will expose whether you are choosing peace or pleasing others. Certain interactions will reveal whether you stay quiet to avoid discomfort or speak clearly to protect your growth. You will sense who uplifts you and who drains you. This awareness is not meant to create distance. It is meant to reveal what needs to be adjusted. The test asks, will you adjust your boundaries according to your new clarity? Another part of the test appears in your habits. When the Mercury shift heightens your awareness, your mind can no longer tolerate the behaviors that delay your growth. On 11 December, you will feel the weight of your habits more intensely. Procrastination will feel heavier. Overthinking will feel exhausting. Distractions will feel meaningless. These feelings are not judgment, they are signals. They tell you that your old lifestyle no longer matches your new awareness. The test asks whether you will choose discipline or continue feeding the patterns that hold you back. The Mercury shift also tests your emotional reactions. It shows you how quickly you fall into old emotional cycles. It shows you where you lose control. It shows you the triggers you never addressed. On 11 December, these emotional tests rise to the surface because awareness without emotional maturity cannot lead to transformation. The Mercury shift pushes you to respond with intention instead of reacting blindly. It teaches you that real strength is the ability to pause, breathe, and choose your response consciously. The test of alignment also appears in your decisions. On 11 December, you may face choices that require courage, choices that push you out of your comfort zone. The Mercury shift doesn't test you with fantasies. It tests you with decisions that affect your daily life. Will you stay committed to the path of growth when it becomes uncomfortable? Will you follow the clarity received, or will you retreat into what feels familiar? The test reveals the truth. Growth is not measured by what you want. It is measured by what you choose. As you move through 11 December, the Mercury shift becomes a mirror that reflects your true intentions. It shows you whether your actions match your words. It shows you whether your desires match your discipline. It shows you whether your dreams match your effort. This test is not external, it is internal. It is the test of whether you can be loyal to the version of yourself you are becoming, even when the old version demands to survive. The Mercury shift tests your alignment, because without alignment, transformation cannot take root. It forces you to make choices that reflect your new clarity. It pushes you to walk away from behaviors that no longer serve your path. It asks you to stand in your truth, even when it feels unfamiliar. This is not a punishment, it is preparation. The shift prepares you for the next stage of your growth by making sure you are not carrying old habits into your new identity. On 11 December, the test of alignment becomes the turning point. If you choose awareness over impulse, discipline over habit, truth over comfort, you step through the doorway of transformation with strength. The test is the moment where your future self is born through your actions, not your intentions. The Mercury shift challenges you to rise not by force, but by clarity. And once you choose alignment, the path ahead becomes cleaner, sharper, and far more powerful than anything you left behind. When the Mercury shift reaches its full strength on 11 December, something remarkable begins to unfold inside you. After the old identity breaks down, after your awareness sharpens, after your inner clarity rises, a new direction begins to reveal itself. It doesn't arrive loudly. It doesn't force itself into your mind. It comes in quietly, like a steady realization that you can no longer walk the same path you once did. This shift guides you toward a new purpose, one that aligns with your truth rather than your fear, your strength rather than your past, your growth rather than your limitation. On 11 December, you begin to sense that your life is ready to move in a different direction. You start noticing ideas, opportunities, or thoughts that pull you forward. These are not coincidences. They are signs that your inner world is preparing for expansion. The Mercury shift creates a space inside you that allows new inspiration to enter. Without releasing the old identity, this space could not exist. Now, with your inner world cleared, you finally recognize the possibility that were always there but invisible to your old mindset. You may feel a quiet certainty rising within you, a sense that something new is calling you. You might not be able to explain it, but you can feel it. This inner pull toward growth is the direct effect of the Mercury shift. On 11 December, your intuition becomes the bridge between who you used to be and who you are becoming. You start understanding what you truly value, not what you were taught to value, not what others expect from you, but what actually resonates with your inner self. New pathways don't always appear as dramatic events. Sometimes they appear as clarity. I cannot continue living like this. I deserve better than this. I am ready for something new. These thoughts are not small. They are the beginning of transformation. They mark the moment your inner world begins to align with a future that demands your growth. As the Mercury shift continues to unfold, you begin to question the routines that kept you stagnant. You start seeing how much time you wasted on distractions. You notice how often you placed limits on your own potential. You realize how many opportunities you ignored because your old self was afraid. Now, on 11 December, the shift brings awareness strong enough to break those limitations. It gives you the courage to imagine a life you once believed was out of reach. This day teaches you that your purpose is not something you find. It is something you create through the decisions you make and the discipline you practice. The Mercury shift encourages you to take responsibility for your direction. It shows you that new beginnings do not come from waiting. They come from choosing. When you choose growth, your path evolves. When you choose clarity, confusion weakens. When you choose discipline, progress begins. This is the real transformation that starts on 11 December. Your new pathway may come through inspiration, an idea that wakes up your passion. It may come through realization, finally seeing what needs to change. It may come through release, letting go of something that held you back. Or it may come through discomfort, because sometimes discomfort is the clearest sign that you have outgrown your environment. The Mercury shift uses everything, your emotions, your clarity, your experiences to guide you forward. Nothing is wasted. On 11 December, you begin to rise above the identity that kept you limited. You start seeing that your potential is not something distant. It has always been within you, but it required awareness to activate. The Mercury shift activates that potential by removing distractions, revealing truth, and elevating your thinking. You begin to understand that your life only changes when you do. And now, you are changing from the inside out. With your new awareness, you start recognizing opportunities that match your growth. You see connections that lead you forward. You understand which actions are aligned with your future and which ones belong to the past. This clarity makes it easier to make decisions. It becomes easier to focus. It becomes easier to commit. The Mercury shift sharpens your direction and makes your path feel cleaner, sharper, and more intentional. On 11 December, the new pathway also requires something from you: consistency. Transformation is not a single moment. It is a daily practice. The Mercury shift reveals the path, but you must walk it. It gives you clarity, but you must act on it. It removes illusions, but you must choose truth over comfort. This shift marks the beginning of a journey where your actions and your purpose must align. When they do, everything becomes more powerful. As you step into the new phase of your life, you will feel a growing sense of alignment, like your inner world and outer world are finally moving in the same direction. You feel lighter because you are no longer fighting your own truth. You feel stronger because you are acting from awareness, not habit. You feel more focused because you are no longer carrying the weight of your old identity. This is the real gift of the Mercury shift on 11 December. The realization that your life can rise when you rise. This shift marks the moment where you stop waiting for change and start creating it. You recognize your resilience. You recognize your strength. You recognize your responsibility. The new path does not appear by luck. It appears because you finally became ready to see it. On 11 December, as the Mercury shift opens your inner vision, you step into a future built not by chance, but by clarity, discipline, and the courage to become who you were meant to be.